Everyone, this is Leslie Nips. This is the re-recording of the first class that we had a few days ago, in which Mercury retrograde and the solar eclipse and the cusp and just bad luck took over our technology. So this is going to fill in the bits on the first half that did not succeed in being recorded. You've already received the recordings for the second half of the class and for the introductions, which I'm really glad somehow I succeeded in recording. So here we go. Class 1 originally took place on October 23rd with Catherine and Stephanie at a distance, and Julie and Cara and Jen all in attendance. Karina and Anna Maria got caught outside of Davis. Their car broke down, more technical problems. And Nancy was on a already planned vacation in Hawaii. So that was the setting. Start out with an introduction from me. Some of this stuff is going to sound weird in this context, but what the heck, let's include it. The rooms for our meetings are going to change from week to week. So please don't just immediately make a beeline to the same room that we've met in before. Please look at the board in the front of Rudra Mandir and look for where we are going to be that night. They didn't have one room that was always available for every evening, so we'll be moving around a little bit. There's also bathrooms, and there's always going to be a break in the middle. So that's just some context to get started with. I also want to just offer up a general introduction. The first thing I want to say to everybody, whether it's your impression that you don't have a business yet because you're still just thinking about it, or you have a mature business, as several of you in the group do, you already have a business. We're all growing and evolving, and I invite you to enjoy it now as it is. Even if it's just something that's in your heart and hasn't fully been actually brought into life yet, your business exists. It's a real thing. It will grow and evolve and become more and more. And there's no time to enjoy it better than right now, rather than some imagined state that's out there that you eventually get to when you think you'll finally be able to enjoy it. And to remind everyone of my informal tagline for my business: if I can do it, anybody can. I genuinely mean this. Until 4 or 5 years ago, I was full-time self-employed. I've never had a business of my own, and it was not an inclination or a natural way for me to live my life. So the fact that I've made a success out of it really does mean that you can too. I'm focused here on long-term sustainability more than I am focused in on short-term enthusiasms. This is not an accelerated learning seminar in which you come for 2 or 3 days and leave pumped and everything's supposed to change. This is really about developing a sustainable way to be in business. We might use the word resilience, self-rapport. We're looking for a way to ride the highs and the lows, which will always be with us, right? In life as in business. So this course, in addition to doing a lot of learning and a lot of change work, hopefully is going to be about you feeling good about yourself as you grow into this experience. We're going to have lots of aspects of business coaching, nuts and bolts, marketing, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not fundamentally a business coaching experience. What most people end up experiencing this as is formation, business formation, and what one might call spiritual formation, becoming more and more in alignment with the work that we're doing in a way that makes it possible to succeed and have the kind of income we need. There's going to be a lot of intense support. There are going to be aspects of it that are going to be very custom designed. I have not planned the entire curriculum out. I obviously do have an outline for myself. I've taught the course before, but I'm going to adjust it based upon the needs of this specific group. And we're going to be engaged in a process of mutual accountability, sharing with each other what we need and how we're growing and how it's going for us. There are a few presuppositions I want to share with you that we're going to kind of step into more and more together. One thing I've noticed is that heart-based practitioners, like all of you in this course, seem to get caught or snagged or stuck or shut down for some very special reasons that are particular to holistic practitioners, coaches, alternative practitioners, heart-based practitioners. There are three of them. The first one is that oftentimes they simply don't have a background in business, understandably. They've been, studying acupuncture or coaching, whatever it is, yeah? The second thing is that they may have no apparent natural interest in business, which also makes sense given the fact that they're interested in their healing modality of one sort or another. And then the last one, which I find the first two are pretty overcomeable with a little bit of reframing about what business is about and my conviction that you can be in business and be in real alignment with your healing modality. That's something I'm very convinced of and will be growing into more and more. But the third one is really tricky, I find, which is that heart-based practitioners have a high degree of unwillingness to be out of alignment with themselves, to be slimy or sleazy or yucky, right? And for a lot of heart-based practitioners, there is the impression that business is kind of yucky, or could be, or maybe, in some ways. There's also this whole concern we have understandably about commodifying, that is, putting a price on to and trying to sell healing, which should be essentially uncommodifiable. Yeah. So we run into these obstacles, and inner wisdom rises up and says, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be like that. And so it cuts short our capacity for success. This is an impression that we're going to be working through together. And I'm going to be talking more about that a little bit later on. Another one of my presuppositions is good enough for now. This is really important. Many of us have issues with perfectionism, and there can be impressions, especially in business, that things have to be perfect, the perfect website, the perfect piece of copy, the perfect program before we can really get going. I'm a big fan of good enough for now, of having a good enough website, a good enough niche. And there are other ways in which that influences the work. Again, I'm going to get to in a little bit. I want to invite us to learn how to try things in a spirit of learning, so that we can do things, make mistakes, quote unquote mistakes, even have modest failures, the program that didn't sell very well, the marketing letter you sent out that in hindsight feels not fully in alignment, you wish you hadn't worded it that way, to develop a capacity and tolerance for learning, for trying things, yeah? In a spirit of feedback. In NLP, there's a presupposition, feedback, not failure. That when things don't work as we had planned, or they don't feel the way they hoped that they felt, that we can chalk it up to learning and give ourselves a pat on the back and say, well, I'm not failing, I'm learning. And we'll do that for ourselves. There are best business practices that I'm going to teach along the way. A lot in the context of the one-on-one calls, a lot in the context of the workshops. But if anything feels out of alignment, the thing I want you to remember is that there's almost always another way to do it in business than the way we thought it had to be done and we had to force ourselves to do it. So that's another one of our presuppositions. And finally, we're not seeking a specific goal to let us know we've arrived, although you do all have goals. And at a minimum, you all have the goals to have happy work that you make a decent living at. That I want that goal for you as well. But above and beyond that, what we want is a capacity, and I've already mentioned this a little bit, to kind of know that we're okay, that we can trust ourselves in the world, that there's a certain quality of resilience to the work that we're doing. And this is something we acquire. This is part of the formational aspect. I remember very strongly that for 2 or 3 years in business, I used to spend a great deal of time worrying about reaching my financial goals. I was in a lot of pain about the fact that, this much money came in this month rather than that much, or these many people signed up for a program rather than for that many people. And I'd worry, like, oh, does this mean I'm not going to make it next month? It's not going to be okay next month. What's going to happen? Perhaps like some of you, I'd create scenarios of being out on the street and not able to pay my rent and things like that. And then what I found at some point in my change work and what I want to do with you, I found myself worrying less. And the external circumstances were pretty much the same. But I felt like I was going to be okay. I felt like maybe I was going to be fine. And so the removal of the worry was actually the key piece in enjoying the business. Yeah. Now, for some of you, I do understand you're not making the money you need. Things can be quite serious. You have sincere and genuine needs. Don't want to diminish that. And what would it be like to be having that experience, but with less worry and more trust? We might imagine that it might produce a better outcome as well. That's an imagining. That's one I hope for you. So that was the introduction that I shared with the group. What we did next, which I did not succeed in filming, was an exercise that we're going to do together at the beginning and the end of almost every workshop that we do together. And I invite you to do it on your own as well. I call it the Heart of Business exercise. It's something I learned from my business coaches. They're Sufis up in Portland, the people at heartofbusiness.com. It's a Sufi practice of getting in touch with your heart and its relationship with the heart of your business. It's a internal practice that I have adapted to a family constellations exercise. So I can't teach that to you now because part of it is modeling it. What I am going to do is when I send this link out to you, I'm going to also send you a link for an audio version of that exercise. It's not quite the same as what we do in the workshop. No worries, we'll get you on board the next workshop that you come to, and we'll be doing that physically with each other. So at this point, we did that exercise for about 20 or 30 minutes. And then we moved into the introductions, which, good luck, the recording did work for. So you've already had that and an opportunity to at least get to know the 5 people who were at that workshop that day. We'll do introductions at the next meeting for the 3 who were not able to make it that night. Then what I leapt into is an overview on the series, and that's what I have up on the board. I'm going to take you through it. So I'm going to move the camera a little bit. Here you go. And hopefully you have a good view of that. So I talked with the group. Try and get both of us in here. We'll adjust from time to time. Oh, I talked with the group about the 3 areas that we're going to attempt to cover in this series. The first one is addressing difficulties. I'm just calling it, generally speaking, addressing difficulties. And there are 3 kinds of difficulties that arise for practitioners trying to build their practices. Again, what I want us to do as we learn about these 3 areas is to develop a capacity to be resilient and bring inner resources for dealing with them as they arise, so that they become learning opportunities rather than brick walls for us, okay? The first one I call learning difficulties, or issues that have to come with cycles. And basically what happens, and I'm going to go into these in more detail in the second half of the class, which you already have the recording of, which is great. I'm glad you have that recording. But these are basically things that just require us to do some learning. Like, I don't know how to make a website, so I need to learn how to make a website. I don't know how to write good marketing copy. I need to learn how to do that. Yeah, it can be uncomfortable. It can be frustrating. It can be even something we prefer not to learn, but in and of itself, it's not a problem. We just need a good resource so that we can learn it in a way that's kind of in alignment with who we are. There are also cycles. I put these in the same category, and I go into a lot more detail about that. But basically, these are things that come up and go around, like seasons. Yeah. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes we just go through winter, and winter's necessary to have spring, and spring's necessary for summer. Yeah. So learning in cycles. The second category is what I call unconscious blocks. And in NLP jargon, we're going to call ecology. So I invite you to learn that word. I'm going to use that word a lot with us. Ecology, if you were like, why is it called ecology? I don't know what that means. Well, think about what ecology is in the real world. So ecology is an environment in which there are plants and animals and weather and geography. Yeah? And imagine that we come in and we take out all the top predators, say the tigers, and on all of a sudden all the lemmings their population explodes because there's no top predator anymore. What we've run into is ecology. Environments want to have homeostasis. They want to have stability more or less. Yeah. And so when we try to make adjustments of any kind to a system, and you're a system, yeah, there's going to be, the system is going to try and keep things the same. What we're up to in this series and in your life in many ways is change. If you're having a hard time letting yourself be visible in the world, for instance, yeah, once we start to try and change that, your ecology is going to try and keep it the same, which is why these are the kinds of patterns that are so hard to change. These are unconscious patterns that are intended unconsciously to maintain safety or belonging, more or less, okay? Making it kind of simple here. It's the unconscious attempts to stay safe and to belong. It's usually out-of-date programming, but the brain is very convinced that these patterns are critical. So when we try and change them by picking up a new practice, the brain says, whoa, they're not so fast. It's not safe, or I might not be able to belong. And it makes the change not happen. So those are the things that you've been trying to do differently in your business for a while, and you haven't been able to be successful at. Things like the procrastination patterns, or sitting down to do something and just not doing it, that kind of thing. So unconscious blocks, or what we're going to call ecology, is another one of the difficulties we run into that we're going to bring some resources for. The other thing is what I call alignment. Issues of misalignment is really the problem, which is basically when we have a value and we try to engage in a set of practices or behaviors that are out of alignment with that value. Yeah. So we try and become successful in business, but some part of us is pretty sure that people who are successful in business are slimy, and then it'll keep us from going forward. Or perhaps a well-meaning coach has told us to do a certain marketing move, and then we try and make ourselves do it because we want to be successful after all, and then we end up getting stuck. Not because it's an unconscious block, but because some inner wisdom is not going to let us get that far out of alignment. Yeah? The reason why I want to distinguish these three things is that often issues of being out of alignment, and sometimes learning difficulties as well, are tagged as unconscious blocks when they're not. So have you ever heard someone say, oh, if you're not able to do that marketing thing, maybe there's something unconsciously blocking your success mindset? Yeah? Well, maybe it's just something deep down you don't want to do. So we want to sort of sort these things out a little bit. The thing I want to underline is that they're all normal. This is really important. We're going to keep on coming back to the normalizing our learning and our experiences. There isn't anyone who doesn't run into learning issues. There isn't anyone who doesn't run into ecology, and there isn't anyone who doesn't occasionally get out of alignment. You know? So These are all normal. What we want to do is to develop resourcefulness in addressing these things as they arise. And I put up this word for the group. The goal is self-rapport, is to be able to meet these challenges, have them arise, to not be so intense and so terrifying and shut us down so intensely, and be able to bring resourcefulness to it because we trust ourselves, because we believe we're on our own side, which is what self-rapport is about. So that's the first of the 3 areas. It's addressing difficulties, which is a big part of what we do. The next area is nuts and bolts. It's how to market, how to sell, how to set up a sales funnel, things like that. We're going to be going through that. Some of you need that more than others. And this is stuff you can get pretty much from any program, and the information is more or less equal. What I do that's a little bit different from some other folks is I do a lot of reframing. So for anybody in the room who feels like marketing feels yucky, what would it be like to enjoy and feel good about marketing? I like to teach these things in a way that would be in alignment for people like us, and so that people can go, oh, that feels so much better. I'm so glad I learned that. Okay, so that's a big part of what we do as well. And then finally, the last section is the last thing we provide, the 3 areas, difficulties, nuts and bolts, is support. And there's different ways in which support shows up. There's the group support. There's, of course, me in the one-on-one calls and leading the group itself. And then finally, I put this in quotation marks, other. And all I mean by that is learning as part of the process what else you need to have support, whether it's your wellness practices, which are really important for people who are in business, or it's professional support. Some of you would prefer to have someone else design your website, or have someone else do your bookkeeping, that kind of thing. So bringing together other kinds of support. It's also addressing the ways in which your current day family interfaces with your business. And sometimes that's kind of tricky. Sometimes family is really, really supportive of us being in business, and sometimes they're hidden or not so hidden intentions about that in our families. Okay, so that's what we're going to be addressing in this program. I want to say a few words about the structure, which you all know about already because you read about it in the webpage for the program, but I just want to review it for all of us. So we have the workshops. The workshops, 8 of these, 3 hours. Yeah, there's 7 more left at this point. These do a few things. There's lecture on the nuts and bolts in the workshops. We're going to be doing lots of change work exercises. These are the things that get to the ecology, especially the unconscious blocks that are about safety and belonging and are interfering with our success in business. We're going to be doing supportive group exercises and processes and learning together, brainstorming, that kind of thing. There is going to be homework, which, as I've already mentioned to all of you, is always optional. And then finally, something that's a little fuzzier, but it's actually at the heart of what this course is about, which is creating a formational field for internalizing a sustainable practitioner stance. I'm going to say that again. It's almost like, for those of you who have any spiritual backgrounds, it's kind of what monastic life is supposed to be for, or what going to your sessions in Zen practice is for. It's the community, yeah? Creating a formational field for internalizing a sustainable practitioner stance. And the nice thing is that although that's kind of weak right now because we've all just met, it gets more powerful as we go along. Yeah. So this is really lovely. We're also going to have the calls. This is the next most important piece. 6 one-hour one-on-one calls. If you haven't started scheduling those yet, please do. This customizes the work. It really makes it possible for me to get to know you and your business and what it is you're working on right now. And in those, we can decide on action steps. And if you would like it, get appropriate accountability from me about following through on those steps. not in a way as to, shake a finger or anything like that, but to have goals for in between the calls, and then we can review how it went. And if anything didn't happen, we get to ask how come. Maybe it was something that you didn't end up wanting to do. Maybe your life exploded and you just couldn't get to it. Or maybe there's a block that we want to explore. So it's always learning. It's not about chastising anybody for anything. And from time to time, we'll do some change work as well, personalized change work in the calls. Varies from person to person and where you're at. So the calls are about that. We've got the partnering, which I've already sent you emails about as well. Entirely optional, one-on-one, changing regularly-ish. The people on Thursday liked the idea of meeting with the same person for 2 weeks. However everyone wants to do it, I'll support this by bringing up the topic every workshop, but I'm not going to follow up on people to make this happen. This is going to be something that you're really going to have to make happen for yourselves if you want to. I really do encourage it. The people who pursue this tend to really get a lot out of it. It's for brainstorming, sharing what you're doing, getting to know each other better. If you want advice, if you don't want advice, ask for what you want in these calls. This is really, really important. Ask for what you would like. And then it can be a really enjoyable call for you. Lost track of my pages. Here we go, page 3. There's email coaching. So I'm available for you to send me emails whenever you want to get feedback, light checking in. A couple of kind of warnings about that. Generally speaking, if something really intense and big is going on that we really need to talk about, don't expect to get a lot of coaching out of that in the emails. If you call me and you're having a really hard time, I'll write back and go, hang in there, I believe in you, I've got you in my prayers. I won't be able to actually do like a lot of work in emails because that's really what the calls are for. And as you can understand, it makes more sense that it would be like that. It is a really, really good way for me to look at copy. If you're coming up with a sales letter, website copy, working on a niche, things like that, for me to give it an eyeball and give you some feedback about it, it's really good for that. If you've developed a plan for something, I can look at that, really good for that. And also for just kind of letting me know, my life's exploded, or gosh, that workshop I planned went really well. I just wanted to celebrate with you. Okay. The other thing is to please keep emails just to reasonable lengths. We all understand what that is. Yeah. And then finally, we do have the Facebook group that's up and running. Again, that's one that is really in your hands. I will be posting articles, some of the homework, other kinds of things. But to the degree that the Facebook group really works, we do have a small group. There's only 8 people. Generally speaking, Facebook groups work when there's a really large group of people and then there's kind of a critical mass who participate. So for those of you who like Facebook groups and like making them work, join on in, be part of the conversation. And remember to, when you join or when you visit it, click on, make the choice of being notified so that people's comments go to your email box, unless for some reason you really don't want that. It's a little bit of a poke for you to notice that something happened on the Facebook group and to participate. Again, though, completely optional. If you're not a Facebooky kind of a person, there's no obligation to participate at all. Occasionally, really good conversations do get started there, though, that are extremely creative and really useful. Okay. So I do have some requests to the group that I would like to make. So I want to make that clear for you, and so that we're all sort of up to date and on the same page. The first thing is I encourage everyone who didn't give the client agreement a careful read to please do that. Most of what our agreements are in there, and it just really helps getting us on the same page. So please do that if you just signed it and sent it off. Please take a look at that. The second one is please communicate. Really, really important. Let me know what's going on. I am available for the email coaching, but again, within reasonable and understandable limits. There are also a lot of people in the class, 8 people in the class, as well as I have other clients. So I need to ask you to take responsibility for getting your own needs met. I'm not going to pursue you for making appointments, or for submitting assignments to me, or for sending me reports. By the way, that's in the client agreement. That was something that some people in the group were a little surprised about. I do encourage you at least 24 hours before our phone sessions to send me a short report on your successes, your challenges, how the assignments went, what you'd like to focus on for this call, and then anything else in your life that seems important or relevant. It just really helps. It makes the call so much more efficient rather than you having to do that all in the first 10 or 15 minutes of the call, and then we've only got 45 minutes left. It's just a very efficient way to get us launched and started. And if you're able to do it 48 hours ahead of time on the report, that's awesome for me. It can be super, super helpful, but please a minimum of 24 hours ahead of time before the call. If you get it to me less time than that, do send it to me anyway. I just may not get to it before the call. I see bunches of clients. I have some days where my to-do list is stacked up, and I very much take responsibility for being ready for your calls and well-informed and kind of in the groove with you. And you can help me do that by making sure that your reports are in 24 hours ahead of time. If you don't remember what I just said, it's in the client agreement, so you can look there for what goes into the reports. If you miss a workshop, you'll get a recording. That's why I'm doing this. And unfortunately, it's a 3-hour video almost with a break in the middle. You got to find time on your own. I know that's really a struggle for a lot of people. It would be hard for me to do as well, to find 3 hours to sit down and watch the video. But I do encourage you to do that when you have to miss a workshop for whatever reason. I am here to support and handhold, but with respect to those kinds of things, seeing the videos, sending in reports, asking for appointments, I'm going to invite you to get your needs met because that'll work better for everybody. Please let me know when something is stuck or not working for you in the program or relationship with me. I'm really eager to work out anything with you, and I personally want to model for all of you okayness with getting negative feedback. Because sometimes you will get negative feedback from your clients. It's understandable. It's part of being in this field together, right? So I want us to be okay with imperfection and allowing hiccups to contribute to our learning. And I obviously can't improve the program unless I hear that there's something that's kind of off or not working on a regular basis. So let me know. I'm happy to respond to those. And I promise to do the same if there's something that's not working in terms of, you know, the agreement we have. I look forward to actually having that relationship. It's one of great trust. It's one where we know we can talk about these things with each other, and that we won't hurt each other's feelings. We'll be okay. Yeah. I want to say a word about my availability. Oh, these were all on here. Sorry, I didn't point to these things as I went through them. We're now down here. Availability. I want to let you all know we all have different preferred means to communicate. These days there's so many choices. I want to let you know my preferred means to communicate with my clients is email. I am a little behind on the whole texting thing. I often will not see them for a day or two. And generally I prefer texting to be with friends and family more than I prefer to keep clients to my email. The good news about email is that this may not be true for you, but it's definitely true for me. It's very rare day when I go by without checking my email. And if it's a desk day, I'm checking it all day long. I'm just always checking it. So your chances of getting a hold of me quickly, or at least letting me know about something quickly, is email. So please use email first and foremost. I want to say the same thing pretty much applies to the phone as applies to my texting. I often don't notice that I've gotten a message for a while. My apologies about that. And I do prefer to keep that for friends and family, and of course, having our phone calls together. Another thing I just want to say about the phone calls again, on the other page, is that if you want your phone call recorded, I've sent you the information for the conference call information. Call into that number and we'll be able to record. So I just wanted to remind everyone about that. And if you have a question about that, just shoot me an email. Okay. I think it'll take a little while for us to work out all these details, but we'll be on board and we'll have it all together soon. Like most self-employed, I don't have a completely clear on and off hours. You know, I work at different weird times. Nonetheless, I generally like to try and observe a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 work week. So just to let you know, I may not respond to an email after 5 p.m. or on weekends. If it's an emergency, emergencies shouldn't arise so much in the kind of work that we do, but if there is one, I will respond as soon as I can, okay? And I live by my commitment to respond to you within 2 business work days, unless otherwise some emergency comes up in my life. And usually it's much, much, much shorter than that. The other thing, of course, is occasionally I'm on vacation or sick. For instance, tomorrow, Monday through Thursday, I'm going to be on retreat. And so I ask you during that times to not expect too much from me, as well as we all need to go on vacation. I want to model that work-life balance, being self-employed. The last thing I want to say, and I want to make sure this comes off the correct way, but I want to invite everyone to plan to work. Now, what I realize is that I have a little bit of a different reaction to this word work than a lot of other people do. And so this is my first nuts and bolts reframing for all of you. I think of work as being part of the expression of our adult dignity. It's part of our creativity. It's part of our way of collaborating and contributing and bringing our best gifts to the world. Some of this work requires a certain amount of, shall we say, groundwork. It's the scaffolding or the infrastructure that goes into being able to do the stuff that we really like, that's really cool. I worked with horses a long time. I loved riding horses. I loved the whole experience of learning how to ride. And there was cleaning the tack and mucking the stalls. You couldn't do it without that. There's a certain amount of what we do to be in business that has that quality to it. And the way that makes cleaning the tack and mucking the stalls work is recognizing it's part of a package with the joy of working with the horses. And so it gets elevated and it doesn't feel like quite so much of a burden. This is the time that we spend creating websites, writing copy, corresponding with clients, invoicing, setting up spreadsheets, all that kind of stuff. It's part of the dignity of the whole thing. And the more and more we can sit down and do that work and feel that connection, the better and better it will feel to us. In Zen Buddhism, and as well as in ascetic Christianity, there are a whole lot of practices around discovering the sacramental nature of mundane tasks like washing dishes, sweeping the floor. We can think of them as irritating burdens on the otherwise free days of our lives, or we can see them as part of the dignity of day-to-day life and experience the sacramental quality inherent in everything that we do. And so for us, people being in business, a great deal of that is expressed in sitting down at the computer and working through to-do lists. That's just the way it is. And the more and more we get into action, the more and more we can feel good about doing that. It feeds on itself. Momentum builds momentum builds momentum. The more we feel ourselves in our adult power about these small things that we cross off, we give a little endorphin joy juice to our brain every time we cross off one of those, the more we can step into it and go, oh, this feels really good. I am an acupuncturist. I am an NLP practitioner. I am an adult with a dignified adult work in the world. This generally feels good to us as we move into it more and more and more. It can set off some ecology. Yeah. For the parts of us when we were young and were wounded, and for whom growing up was very challenging or did not feel like a good idea at the time because the grown-ups around us were so unhappy, perhaps, or other versions of that, right? For a lot of us, being stuck and being kind of small and young and not fully adult is one of the things that we bring to this. And it can be scary to feel like we're being asked to move more and more into our adulthood as we move into being successfully self-employed. But in actuality, and we find this in constellations work all the time, we'll have a role perhaps for a mother who starts out the constellation feeling very overwhelmed and unable to be a mother and barely recognizes the representative for her daughter. But as the constellation unfolds, she steps more and more into her dignity as a mother, and she sees her child and she notices, oh, this is my child. I need to be the grown-up for the child. And it feels good. It feels really, really good. So that's what I want for you. And I invite you to see what that might be like. Being self-employed does require sitting down at the computer and working through to-do lists. Timothy Ferriss wrote The 4-Hour Work Week. I wish that for all of us, truly. And given that we're holistic practitioners, we're probably not working with that kind of a business model, which doesn't mean that we need to work ourselves to the bone. It doesn't even need to mean that we have a 40-hour work week, although I still do, and I feel pretty good about that. It usually means that we can be much more flexible with our time than other 9-to-5ers can be, and that feels really good. And they're still sitting down and being in action about our work. If we are having a hard time going into action about our work, sitting down, being in business, working our business for, a chunk of our week, generally speaking, we're going to ask one of two questions. One is, do you need different structures to help you do that? Calendaring, other kinds of things that often it's the lack of structure that makes it hard for us to sit down and start to just do the work of being in business. The other one can be ecology, of course, as I mentioned. So we'll ask those questions as you're trying to spend an appropriate, whatever that is, amount of time on your business. And what I hope for you is that is the experience of building confidence. There's nothing quite like building your confidence through accomplishment. So at that point, I asked lots of questions. I asked if they had questions, and they asked some, but it was basically this information. And then we had a break. They did a little bit of calendaring around their partnering. And then we moved into the second half of the class, which you already have gotten the recording of. It does not include the last 10 minutes. My apologies about that. It broke off at the very end of the final exercise. So you got the bulk of that exercise. You can do it on your own. I encourage you to do it. Listen to it and just do the steps. And then we did the Heart of Business exercise one more time just at the end to check in. And that was it. And so once again, I will be teaching everyone how to do the Heart of Business exercise. And I do, again, encourage you to click on the other link that's going to be in the email so that you can do that exercise on your own and just get a feel for it. Again, it's not exactly the same as it is in the class, but it's close. Other than that, I'll see you all on November 6th. And thank you for being gracious and patient about our technology woes last week. And let's all send out good energy to the technology gods so that we don't have to experience that again. And I look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye-bye.